Marisol pushed away from the table's edge, her knuckles still aching from the handshake that had sealed her fate. The weight of the title, CEO, pressed against her chest like a new, ill-fitted suit. She could feel the eyes of the board prickling the back of her neck as she rose, gathering the folders she had left behind, the remnants of her old position. This wasn't just a new job. This was her father's legacy, her family name, and now, her burden. She knew the sabotage wouldn't stop at a single prank tweet. There would be whispers in hallways, sabotage in spreadsheets, and alliances made over midnight whiskeys. But Marisol Quinn wasn't about to be the punchline anymore. She squared her shoulders, walked out of the boardroom, and stepped into her new war zone. The 12th floor that once was hers, now the entire building, the entire empire, was hers to command or lose. Full Part 2 will continue here at length, developing conflict, new characters, deep strategy scenes, betrayal hints, and an epic cliffhanger. Marisol pushed away from the table's edge, her knuckles still aching from the handshake that had sealed her fate. The weight of the title, CEO, pressed against her chest like a new, ill-fitted suit. She could feel the eyes of the board prickling the back of her neck as she rose, gathering the folders she had left behind, the remnants of her old position. This wasn't just a new job. This was her father's legacy, her family name, and now, her burden. I strode down the marble corridor, heels clicking in a measured rhythm that echoed off the walls. Each step was a declaration. I belonged here. I had earned this. Yet the pit in my stomach churned with the knowledge that every person I passed, assistant managers juggling coffee trays, security guards tapping at their screens, wondered if I was out of my depth. Behind the glass doors of my new office, the city spread out in an endless grid of possibility. Skyscrapers jostled each other for sunlight, and trains cut silver lines across the asphalt below. I closed the door softly, letting silence gather before me like an audience. I turned to the massive oak desk that now bore my nameplate. My father had always sat rigid in that chair, back straight, eyes sharp. Today, it was mine. I set the boardroom folders down, quarterly projections, digital transformation plans, audit reports. One by one, I opened each document, fingertips tracing the graphs and bullet points that dictated the company's future. We were at a crossroads. The retail sector was fragmenting, consumer habits shifting overnight. One misstep and decades of growth could unravel. My gaze drifted to the photo on the corner of the desk. Dad and me, arms wrapped around each other at my college graduation. His grin was proud, fierce. He believed in me, even when I doubted myself. That photo was a tether, reminding me why I'd accepted this challenge, why I couldn't let a prank define our story. A soft knock rattled the doorframe. It was Claire Wren, my executive assistant. Her auburn hair pulled into a precise twist, expression unreadable. "Good afternoon, Marisol," she said, stepping inside. She placed a fresh pad of paper on my desk and a curated selection of pens. "Board members are waiting at 2 o'clock for your first leadership briefing. Marcus, Lucia, and Gregory have already confirmed attendance." I nodded, folding my hands atop the papers. "Thank you, Claire. Any word from IT about the security breach? I want full access logs." She pursed her lips. "They're on it. But initial reports suggest someone tried to disable your credentials this morning. A failed attempt. They've traced it back to an external IP." A chill ran down my spine. Sabotage, just as I'd feared. "Keep me posted, and schedule a meeting with legal counsel immediately." Claire hesitated, then said, "Email from your father." She slid a tablet across the desk. The subject line blazed. "Confidential, for your eyes only." I tapped it open. Inside, a message from Henry Quinn. "Congratulations, CEO. I know this is sudden. We will face storms, both inside and out. Trust yourself. I'll always have your back." I inhaled. His support was unwavering, but I wondered, when push came to shove, would he stand with me against those who questioned my authority? Or would he retreat into the role of bemused patriarch, leaving me exposed? "Breathe," I told myself. "Tonight I conquer the boardroom. Now sharpen my weapons." As Claire left, I stood and walked to the window. The city's pulse was relentless. There was no pause, no second chances. I ran a hand through my hair and returned to the desk, pulling on my blazer like armor. The boardroom reconvened at 2 sharp. Chairs scraped as I re-entered, and all eyes snapped to me. Marcus wiped his palms on his trousers. Lucia rested her chin on her hand. Gregory adjusted his tie nervously. "Thank you for joining on short notice," I began, voice calm, each word measured. "Today we face the aftermath of an internal crisis, but also an opportunity for renewal. My father's prank may have tested us, but I intend to turn that test into triumph." I clicked the remote, and the projector hummed to life. Slide 1. Market share analysis, Q2. Graphs danced across the screen in vibrant color, blue lines ascending, red bars flattening where we lagged. "As you can see," I continued, "our digital platform growth outpaces brick-and-mortar sales by 15% this quarter. This is not just a trend. It's a transformation. If we pivot resources strategically over the next 6 months, we can lead the market rather than follow." Lucia raised a brow. "Shifting budget mid-year is risky. What about our retail partnerships?" I pulled up slide 3, a breakdown of projected timelines and resource allocations. Our team can complete the rollout within 8 weeks if we authorize an accelerated deployment and bring on 2 contract engineers. Approval needed by the end of this week. Silence crashed over the table, then Gregory spoke, voice tight. "You're asking us to gamble with millions." I leaned forward. "I'm asking us to lead change rather than chase it. History doesn't honor the hesitant." Their eyes flicked between me and my father's empty seat at the head of the table. I knew they wanted his imprimatur, but tonight, I held that authority. Cueing the final slide, I revealed a mock-up of a viral marketing campaign. Bold imagery, women in power suits. Bold headlines. Asterisk, Quinn & Company, shaping tomorrow. Brand perception drives loyalty. We launched this campaign in tandem with the platform upgrade. It sends a message: Quinn & Company is evolving, and we're leading the charge. A long beat passed. Then Claire's voice crackled over the speaker system. "IT confirms the IP attempt originated from inside the building." Heads whipped toward the door. I turned slowly. Corporate security agents stood at the threshold, flanking someone in a gray suit. "Kyle Donovan," the lead agent said, voice low, "former VP of Operations. He was terminated last quarter. We have reason to believe he's trying to access confidential systems." The room went cold. Kyle had been a rising star, until a compliance breach cost him everything. I remembered his folded shoulders the day he handed in his resignation. "Where is he now?" I asked. The second agent pointed. Kyle perched at the edge of the table, palms shaking. His eyes locked on mine, a flicker of desperation there. "Ms. Quinn," he whispered, "I need to talk." 1,000 questions flooded my mind. Betrayal was no longer hypothetical. It was standing before me, voice quavering, pleading for mercy. I rose. "You have 10 seconds to explain yourself, Kyle, before security escorts you out." He swallowed. There's more than just a prank or a breach. Your father's company is compromised. I have proof." My pulse pounded. "Proof of what? A competitor's sabotage? Internal embezzlement? Corporate espionage?" Kyle's glance darted to the door, to the board, to my face. "You need to see this." Before I could respond, the lights flickered, and the projector cut out, plunging us into darkness. A low hum of panic rose. Then a single red dot appeared on the screen behind me. It pulsed steadily. The emergency alarm blared. Doors clicked locked. I felt the weight of every eye in that room, every unspoken fear. And I realized this battle was only just beginning. The emergency alarm's wail cut through the darkness like a wounded animal, bouncing off the glass walls of the boardroom. Red strobes pulsed in time with my heartbeat. Kyle Donovan's eyes darted around, terror etched into every line of his face. Security agents converged, but before they could lay a hand on him, he lunged toward the table, snatching a manila envelope from beneath his jacket. His fingers trembled as he tore it open, revealing a stack of flash drives and printed spreadsheets. "I shouldn't have hidden these here," he gasped, dropping them onto the polished wood. "But I knew you'd see them." The room fell silent. Even the alarm seemed to hesitate. I stepped closer, adrenaline sharpening my focus. "What is this?" I asked, voice steady despite the chaos. Kyle swallowed, swallowing again. "Evidence. Evidence that Quinn & Co.'s supply chain has been infiltrated. Fake invoices, offshore shell companies siphoning funds. Someone on the inside is behind it." I reached for the nearest drive, heart pounding as I plugged it into my tablet. Files populated the screen. Invoices doctored, vendor accounts rerouted, payments vanishing into thin air. Names and numbers scrawled in red ink marked the culprits. Lucia gasped. "This can't be real." I tapped through the documents, feeling a cold dread settle in my gut. "It's real," I said, "but who would do this?" Kyle's gaze flicked to my father's portrait on the far wall. "They want to destroy him, and you." A tremor hit my hands. My father's antics had always been eccentric, never malicious. But now, his empire was under assault, and I stood at the center of the storm. The alarm cut out as abruptly as it began. Glass doors slid open up and down the corridor. Footsteps thundered closer. I looked at the board. Gregory, arms crossed. Marcus, frowning. Lucia, stunned. Camille, calculating. Then back at Kyle. Then at the drives spinning on my screen. "Our next move?" I asked, voice cold. Kyle's lips pressed into a thin line. "We need to go public. Expose the fraud before they bury the evidence." Silence. Then Gregory stood. "We can't risk stock prices, share value." I slammed my palm on the table. "We keep this inside, legal handles the rest. First, we trace the money. Then, we cut off the lifeline." Lucia nodded slowly. "We have 2 hours before the markets open in London. If this leaks, half the board will demand your resignation." I leveled my gaze at each of them. "Then we move faster." Marcus tapped his tablet. "IT says there are more IP attempts. They're scanning for vulnerabilities." My mind raced. The boardroom transformed into a war room. Claire materialized with fresh coffees and notepads. Camille whispered legal strategy under her breath. Kyle handed me the remaining drives. I drew in a steady breath. "I'll take the drives to IT myself." "Lucia, coordinate with legal. Gregory, monitor our communications. Marcus, isolate the affected servers. We lock this down now." As I strode for the door, Claire fell in step beside me. "Be careful," she murmured. I nodded. No one's stopping me. In the server room, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Racks of blinking machines lined the walls. IT technicians paused their work as I entered, surprise flickering on their faces. I thrust the drives at Hari, the lead engineer. "Trace every transaction tagged here. I want a full audit of all vendor accounts by noon." He bowed, white-knuckled. "Right away, CEO." I didn't wait. I snapped a picture of a spreadsheet on the nearest monitor and sent it to Camille. The lines of code scrolled past, an indecipherable ballet of zeros and ones. But I could see the red flags: missing payments, rerouted addresses, phantom vendors. A sudden chime from my phone. The company-wide Slack channel glowed with a message. "Urgent. Network breach detected. All employees, log off immediately." I clenched my jaw. "You heard them," I barked. "Lock everything down." The technicians scrambled. Firewalls rose, access points closed. But I knew it wasn't enough. Someone was still inside. I tapped my phone. "Claire, get security details. Who's on the guest list today? Anyone unauthorized? I need names." Her reply came almost instantly. "Kyle Donovan's access was reactivated this morning by an unknown account." Kyle shifted by the door. That was me. I whirled. "You?" He looked ashamed. "I needed to get these to you. I didn't have authorization, but they activated my credentials. Someone higher up." A chill. Someone inside the board exploited his access. My father? No, he'd never. It had to be someone else. I stormed back to the boardroom. The door slid open to reveal eyes wide in surprise. I placed Kyle and the drives before them. Marisol's heels struck the marble floor like the beat of a war drum as she left the boardroom, her mind spinning with names, numbers, and the rustle of betrayal that whispered through Quinn & Co.'s glass corridors. The air outside felt colder, sharper. as if the entire building knew something was fracturing inside its walls. Claire fell in step beside her again, her eyes wide with the questions she didn't dare voice in front of the board. Security is combing the server logs. They found more ghost IPs routed through our London office. We think someone there might be laundering the funds. Marisol didn't slow her pace. Pull the last 6 months of vendor records. Cross-check them with payroll. I want to know who's been double-dipping. And Claire, bring in Thomas Locke from compliance. No calls. No emails. Face-to-face. Claire nodded and peeled away, disappearing into the rows of cubicles that seemed suddenly foreign to Marisol, as if each desk might be hiding an enemy. She made her way to the elevator and punched the button for the executive suite, her father's old sanctum. If there were secrets buried here, she'd unearth them, even if it meant tearing down every polished wall. Inside, the office smelled like cedar and expensive cologne. His chair sat precisely where he'd left it, pushed in under the mahogany desk that was far too grand for anyone who claimed to be a man of the people. She sat in it anyway, feeling the ghosts of his decisions radiating through the leather. Her fingers hovered over the hidden drawer on the right side, the one she'd discovered as a child, playing hide-and-seek under the desk when her father was in meetings. She pressed the latch. It clicked open, revealing a single black notebook, the leather cover cracked at the edges. She flipped it open and ran her eyes down the neat rows of figures and initials. Codes she recognized. Offshore accounts, vendor aliases, discreet donations to foundations she now knew didn't exist, a ledger of the empire's cracks. A knock startled her. She closed the notebook with a snap as Thomas Locke stepped in. Tall and thin, the kind of man who could read a financial statement like a confession. "Miss Quinn," he said with that dry lawyer's calm, "Claire said you needed me off the record." Marisol gestured to the chair across from her. "Tell me everything you know about unauthorized vendor payouts and ghost employees." He hesitated, then opened his laptop. The soft blue glow of the screen painted his face as he navigated buried files. "We've suspected for months. We flagged anomalies in the Romania and Dubai offices. Your father didn't want them escalated. He thought it would work itself out." Marisol clenched her teeth. "It never does. Show me the pipeline." Thomas turned the screen to her. Graphs, charts, invoices. The money didn't just bleed out. It was siphoned, systematically, like a vein feeding someone else's heart. Shell companies with overlapping owners. Transactions logged at odd hours, masked by legitimate payroll disbursements. She leaned back, the chair creaking under her. Who has the authority to approve these payments? Thomas didn't blink. Level 4 finance admins and executive sign-offs. One name comes up more than once. Gregory Hart. Her breath caught. Gregory, the CFO, her father's trusted right hand for a decade. The same man who had balked at her proposals, hidden behind conservative projections, always the voice of caution, the perfect mask for a traitor. "I need proof," she said, voice low. "Nothing that can be spun or buried." Thomas slid a flash drive across the desk. "It's all here. But be careful, Marisol. If he's done this much under your father's nose, he won't let you shut him down quietly." She slipped the drive into her blazer pocket. "Then I won't be quiet." The rest of the day blurred into a riot of hushed meetings and coded texts. Claire whispered updates every hour. Travel records showing Gregory's frequent, unexplained flights, calls to burner numbers traced to offshore lawyers. Each puzzle piece clicked into place with a sickening finality. As dusk settled outside the window, Marisol called for a late board session. The tension in the room was electric when she stepped in. Gregory sat at the far end, fingers steepled under his chin. She tossed the black notebook on the table. It slid to a stop inches from him. "Care to explain this?" she asked. Gregory's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get that?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is the pattern. Your signatures authorizing payments to ghost vendors, your travel logs to cities where those shell companies exist, and your personal accounts that suddenly look very flush." A murmur rippled through the board. Gregory leaned back, a cold smirk flickering across his lips. Do you really think you can hold this company together, Marisol? This building is full of secrets, full of people who want to see you fail. You're a child playing dress-up with your daddy's kingdom. Her hands flattened on the table. It's not my father's kingdom anymore. It's mine, and your game is over. He laughed. Is it? You think firing me will stop what's coming? Before she could respond, a security guard stepped forward, hand on Gregory's shoulder. He didn't resist. He just smiled at her, a look that promised more storms ahead. As the door closed behind him, Marisol felt the weight of the entire room shift. Lucia spoke first, her voice trembling with awe and fear. What now? Marisol glanced around at each of them. The loyal, the uncertain, the opportunists who'd pick at the carcass if she faltered. She drew a long breath. Now, she said, we clean house, we rebuild, and we make damn sure Quinn & Company is unshakable. Her phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. You've only just begun. A chill slid down her spine as she stared at the words. The war wasn't over, it was just changing shape. Marisol stayed at her desk long after the others had gone home. The city lights outside painted shifting constellations on the floor, but her focus was a single slip of paper. The anonymous message still burned into her mind. You've only just begun. She turned it over and over in her head, hearing echoes of Gregory's venomous smirk as security dragged him away. He wasn't working alone. No one who moved that much money, forged that many shell companies, could do it in a vacuum. There were accomplices, inside and out. She could almost feel them watching, waiting for her to misstep. The hum of the office grew quieter as the cleaning crew finished the last of their rounds. Claire, who refused to leave, sat cross-legged on the leather couch by the window, scrolling through security logs on her tablet. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair pulled back into a loose bun that looked like it was ready to fall apart. Marisol pushed away from the desk and joined her, the warmth of the city view behind them casting the office in soft amber. Tell me something good, she said. Claire sighed, stretching her neck. Good news? IT thinks they've locked out the last of Gregory's admin backdoors. We've rerouted all vendor payments through two-step verifications. No more ghost invoices. Marisol raised an eyebrow. And the bad news? Claire flipped the tablet around. A single email thread sat open. Subject line flagged, attached to accounts in Dubai and Hong Kong. These accounts were triggered tonight. Huge sums moving through them, but they're older than Gregory's fraud, years older. Marisol felt her stomach drop. You're telling me this rot started before him? Claire hesitated. I'm telling you, someone groomed Gregory to be the face of it while they pulled the real strings. And I don't think it was your father. Marisol's gaze drifted to the dark skyline, the weight of her father's secrets pressing on her chest like an old bruise. She wondered if he knew, if the man who'd taught her to ride a bike and read a balance sheet had been willfully blind, or worse, complicit. She took the tablet, scrolling through line after line of wire transfers. The same shell companies popped up over and over, shifting like a hydra. Cut off one head, two more sprouted in its place. One name kept surfacing in the shadows. Avalon Holdings. Marisol tapped the name, pulling up a registered address in Luxembourg, a board of directors hidden behind layers of corporate veils. Her eyes narrowed. She recognized one name buried deep in the list, Martin Voss, a name that hadn't crossed her mind in years. Claire squinted. Who is he? Marisol's lips pressed into a thin line. A ghost. He was my father's mentor, retired years ago, supposedly. Claire leaned back. Should we call Henry? Marisol's heart squeezed. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But that was the old Marisol, the one who ran to her father for help when the world got too big. This was her fight now. No, not yet. Get me the corporate registration files on Avalon Holdings. Everything. We need to know who still works with him. Claire stood, massaging her temples. I'll pull an all-nighter. But Marisol, if Voss is involved, this is bigger than fraud. It's organized, international, and brutal. You could get buried. Marisol locked eyes with her. Then we dig deeper. And we don't stop. 'Kay? She pulled her phone out of her blazer pocket and recorded a voice memo to herself, a ritual she'd started during college finals, a way to think out loud. Note to self, she whispered, trust no one who says they're clean. Gregory's gone, but his fingerprints are all over this building. Voss is the next lead. Follow the money, follow the paper trail, follow the lies. Claire's phone buzzed on the table. A single, sharp alert. She read it, color draining from her face. Marisol, you need to see this. On the screen was a photo, her father, Henry Quinn, outside the Quinn estate, cornered by two men in dark suits. The grainy street camera footage made it look almost normal, a casual meeting, but the timestamp said it was taken 2 hours ago, and the expression on Henry's face, half turned toward the camera, looked anything but casual. It looked afraid. Marisol grabbed her keys, shrugging on her coat. Get the car, now. They drove through the Chicago night, streets blurring past in neon streaks. Her father's house loomed ahead, an old Tudor fortress with ivy climbing up the stone walls. She burst through the gate before the driver had even stopped the car. Claire scrambled after her. Inside, the place felt wrong immediately. Lights off, fireplace cold, a half-drunk glass of scotch on the piano, papers scattered across the coffee table, contracts, old tax returns, letters with her name on them, and a note in her father's neat, heavy hand. Trust only the truth you find yourself. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Too slow. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Marisol froze. She motioned for Claire to stay put and crept up the staircase, heart hammering against her ribs. The hallway smelled faintly of cigars and cedar. She pushed her father's study door open. The room was empty, save for the glow of a laptop on the desk. On the screen, a video feed played. Henry Quinn, blindfolded, seated in a warehouse somewhere. A man's voice, distorted and low, spoke over the audio. Marisol, the company or your father, choose wisely. She swallowed the bile rising in her throat. Her father had always said the worst betrayals come from inside your own walls. Now she understood exactly what he meant. Downstairs, Claire shouted her name. Marisol tore her eyes away from the screen and ran back down, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. Claire held up her phone. They leaked the fraud story. It's trending. Stock is already tanking. Marisol's mind spun. Her father missing, the company under siege, enemies at every door. And tomorrow, she'd have to stand before the world and fight back, or watch everything crumble. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Marisol spent the hours before dawn, pacing the length of her father's living room. Her eyes flicked between the cold glass of the scotch he'd left behind and the flickering feed on her phone. Her father's blindfolded figure, slumped in that warehouse. She replayed the video a dozen times, hunting for clues. The concrete floor stained with oil, the faint echo of ships in the background, maybe the hum of a generator. It wasn't much, but it was something. She forced herself to focus on the details instead of the raw terror squeezing her ribs. Claire sat curled on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees, phone pinned between shoulder and ear as she relayed instructions to the legal team, security, PR, everyone they could still trust. With the fraud leak burning through the markets, panic was spreading fast. Already, her phone buzzed with demands from the board, investors, journalists, each ping another weight dragging her under. She stopped pacing only when Claire spoke her name softly, like she'd done when they were fresh out of grad school, pulling all-nighters for a presentation that might land them an internship. Marisol, sit for 5 minutes, you need to think clearly. She sank onto the edge of the coffee table, rubbing at the bruise blooming under her collarbone from when she'd stumbled against the railing outside. They'll come for us next. Whoever took him, whoever leaked the story. They'll push me out before sunrise if I don't have proof of what's really happening. Claire closed her laptop with a quiet snap. You think the board's in on it? Marisol gave a bitter laugh. Not all of them, just enough to believe the lies. Enough to think the company's safer in someone else's hands. She pulled her phone closer, tapping back into the data files they'd ripped from Gregory's drives. Avalon Holdings. Martin Voss. The offshore accounts looping through Luxembourg and Dubai like a spider's web. Every thread she tugged only revealed more knots. Claire's voice brought her back. We have the finance audit coming in. By noon we'll know where every dollar went. If we find the money trail, we find leverage. Leverage, Marisol murmured. Or bullets. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten to a sickly gray. She stood again, grabbed the Scotch glass, and hurled it into the fireplace. It shattered, sparks flaring against the cold logs. This ends today. No more waiting for the next move. I'm taking this public. A press conference at headquarters by 10. Claire stiffened. You'll put a target on your back. They'll come after you harder. Then let them, Marisol said. They think fear will break me? They're about to learn exactly who they're dealing with. By 9:30, the marble lobby of Quinn & Company was a storm of reporters, camera crews, and uniformed security. Marisol stood behind the tinted glass doors, heart drumming in her throat, watching her reflection flicker with each camera flash. In the corner, Claire was handing off files to a trusted junior associate, barking instructions that left no room for doubt. Marisol smoothed her blazer, black, crisp, a color that made her feel carved from stone, and stepped forward. As the doors opened, the buzz of noise crashed into her like a wave. Microphones lunged toward her face. Questions volleyed from every side. Is the fraud real? Is your father missing? Did you know about the shell companies? Marisol lifted a hand. The hush that fell was almost reverent, as if they too wanted her to prove she was more than the caricature in Henry Quinn's prank tweet. Everything you've heard is only half the truth, she said, her voice steady but cutting through the press pit like a blade. Yes. Fraud was uncovered. Yes. It ran deep. But this was not an accident. It was orchestrated by people who want Quinn & Company broken apart and sold off, piece by piece, to line their pockets. And they will not succeed. The crowd rippled, phones recording, lights strobing. Somewhere near the front, a young journalist raised a trembling hand. And your father? Marisol's throat tightened. She forced her chin higher. My father has been taken by the same people who thought they could control this company through fear. He trusted the wrong people. I won't make that mistake. She unfolded a printed statement and held it up. This is our proof. Documents showing the offshore accounts, the network behind Avalon Holdings, the trail that leads straight to Martin Voss and his co-conspirators. From this moment, every shred of this goes to the authorities, and to the public. A single camera flash caught the faint tremor in her hand, but her voice didn't waver. I am not stepping down. I am not selling. Quinn & Company will stand, and every traitor who thought they could hide in these halls will face me first. A roar of questions rose behind her, but Marisol turned on her heel and walked back through the glass doors, her pulse hammering so hard she thought her ribs might splinter. Inside, Claire caught her arm, eyes wide. The board is calling an emergency vote. They're scared. Good, Marisol hissed. Fear keeps them honest. But in the same breath, her phone buzzed. A single new message from that same anonymous number, the one that had haunted her dreams for days now. Check your father's office. Top drawers Nakas Menines. She didn't hesitate. She bolted for the elevator, Claire matching her stride. The executive floor felt like a tomb when they stepped out. Her father's study door loomed at the end of the corridor, dark and still. Marisol crossed to the desk, ignoring the way her hands shook as she pulled the top drawer open. Inside was a single flash drive, matte black, no label. She plugged it into her phone, breath caught in her throat. A video opened, grainy footage, her father again, blindfold removed, sweat glistening on his brow. Across from him, the unmistakable silhouette of Martin Voss, older but every bit as sharp as she remembered from childhood dinners, where she'd watched him whisper in her father's ear. Voss leaned forward. She won't survive this, Henry. Let us handle the transition, sign over controlling interest, and we'll let her walk away. Henry's voice, ragged but defiant. You don't know my daughter. Voss laughed. She's a child. She'll fold. They always do. Marisol yanked the drive free, rage blinding her for a second. She looked up at Claire, her voice like steel. Get every lawyer we have. Get every journalist we trust. And get me Martin Voss's address." Claire nodded, eyes shining. "What are you going to do?" Marisol's jaw set. "What my father expects me to do. I'm going to finish this." Marisol had never seen the city look so small. From the top floor of the Quinn and Company Tower, the skyline that once inspired her felt like a chessboard, where every piece had moved while she wasn't looking. Somewhere out there, Martin Voss sat in a penthouse or boardroom or safe house, calculating his next strike. And somewhere else, her father waited in the cold dark of that warehouse, a pawn sacrificed for an empire built on lies. Claire hovered by the office door, phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated the last pieces of their plan. The press conference had bought them a few hours. Enough time to crack open the shell companies, freeze accounts, and tie Voss's network up in so much red tape that even the best lawyers couldn't untangle it overnight. But Marisol knew that legal pressure alone wouldn't be enough. Voss played in the shadows. She needed to drag him out into the light. She turned from the window and faced Claire. "Tell the security detail to stand down from the outer lobby. We need them watching the lower docks near the riverfront. That's where they're holding him." Claire lowered the phone. "You're sure?" Marisol pointed to the video still paused on her laptop. A single frame showed a rusted metal sign behind her father's chair. Pilgrim Shipping, Colorado. She'd spent the last hour cross-referencing every abandoned shipping warehouse along the Chicago River. Only one still carried that name. Claire's face was pale but resolute. "We can call the police." Marisol shook her head. "By the time the police untangle the jurisdiction, Voss will have moved him. Or worse. No, this is ours to handle." Claire started to protest, but Marisol raised a hand. "Get me the board on a secure line. They need to hear from me directly before we go. If they have any faith left, this is when they show it." The board conference call crackled to life minutes later. Names lit up on the screen: Lucia, Marcus, Camille, and 2 empty slots where Gregory's allies had once dialed in. Marisol didn't waste a second. "You've all seen the press conference. You know what we're facing. Voss and Avalon Holdings want this company carved up and sold. They have my father, and they're betting I'll fold." Lucia's voice was a whisper, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "They kidnapped Henry?" "Yes," Marisol snapped. "And they leaked our internal financials to make it look like I was incompetent. If any of you think stepping aside will save us, say so now. Because once I move, there's no retreat." Silence. Then Marcus spoke, low and careful. "What do you need from us?" Marisol leaned forward, eyes locked on the tiny camera. "Hold the line. Authorize my emergency executive powers. Give me full access to our offshore accounts so I can choke off Voss's money flow. And when this is over, stand with me when we press charges." Camille's eyes narrowed. "And if it fails?" Marisol didn't blink. "If it fails, you'll never see me again. But you'll never see your shares again either." A long pause. One by one, the green lights flicked on next to their names. A chorus of muted assent. When the call ended, Claire handed Marisol a slim folder, her fingers trembling. Inside was a blueprint of the docks, security codes for the gates, a stack of photos marking exits and blind spots. Marisol looked at her friend, her only real ally left, and felt a surge of gratitude so fierce it almost choked her. "You don't have to come," she said softly. Claire snorted. "If you think I'm letting you march into a warehouse full of mercenaries alone, you're insane. I'll drive." The riverfront was dead quiet when they arrived. Old street lamps flickered over cracked pavement. Barges bobbed gently against the pilings, metal groaning like some beast in its sleep. They parked 2 blocks away. Marisol slipped her phone into her pocket, double-checked the flash drive still zipped in her coat. The final nail in Voss's coffin if she could get it to the press. Claire adjusted her earpiece, voice calm but eyes wild with adrenaline. "Once we're inside, I'll loop around to the back. If I can disable the generator, you'll have about 5 minutes before backup lights kick in." Marisol nodded. "Don't wait for me. If it goes wrong, you get out." They crept through the side gate, boots crunching on gravel. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking corpse of corrugated metal and broken windows. Marisol's pulse thudded in her ears as she slipped inside, the cavernous space swallowing the moonlight behind her. At first, all she heard was the drip 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 of water leaking from a cracked pipe. Then, voices, low, conspiratorial, echoing off the concrete walls. She flattened against a rusted container, inching forward until she could see them. 3 men in tailored coats, huddled near a makeshift desk piled with ledgers and tablets. And in the corner, her father, bound to a chair, head hanging, a bruise blooming under one eye. Marisol stepped out of the shadows, her voice like a whip crack. "Martin Voss, you're running out of time." The tallest figure turned, and even in the dim light, she saw the years hadn't dulled his eyes. They glowed cold as a winter lake. Voss smiled, slow and deliberate. "Marisol Quinn, just like your father, always walking into traps with your head high." She lifted the flash drive, letting the faint light catch it. "This goes live in 1 hour. All your accounts, all your shells, every bribe you've ever made. Unless you let him go and vanish." Voss's laugh echoed off the steel beams. "Do you think I'm that stupid? You have no leverage. This company is mine now." Behind her, she heard the power hum die. Claire's doing. Darkness fell in a wave, punctuated only by the exit signs. Shouts rose as the men scrambled for flashlights. Marisol lunged for her father, cutting the zip ties with shaking hands. "Dad, can you stand?" she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, but burning with something fierce. "Told you, you'd be better than me." She hoisted him up, draping his arm over her shoulders. Footsteps thundered closer. Voss's men, barking orders. A gun cocked somewhere in the dark. A single beam of light stabbed through the gloom. Claire, waving them toward the back door. "Marisol, now!" They staggered across the oil-slick floor, every breath a prayer that no bullet found its mark. Behind them, Voss's voice rose, raw with fury. "This isn't over, girl. This is just the beginning." But Marisol didn't look back. Outside, the dawn was breaking, pale and cold, but bright enough to promise that this fight, brutal and ugly as it was, wasn't finished yet. She tightened her grip on her father's shoulder and glanced at Claire, who stood by the getaway car, hair whipping in the wind. Together they would face the next storm. Boardrooms, shareholders, lawsuits, revenge. She'd take it all. Because she wasn't the punchline anymore. Marisol didn't sleep for 72 hours. Not when they finally pulled her father out of that warehouse. Not when she sat by his hospital bed, watching the shallow rise and fall of his chest as the IV dripped into his vein. Not when she met with Claire and the legal team in a cramped break room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as they drafted the statement that would go out to the world. The dawn after the rescue was cold, the kind of Chicago cold that stings your cheeks raw and makes your bones feel hollow. Marisol stood outside the hospital's back entrance, phone pressed to her ear, steam rising from the coffee she'd forgotten to drink. The board was on the line again. They always were these days, whispering about shareholder meetings, crisis management, contingency plans. She tuned them out for a moment, eyes fixed on the skyline beyond the frosted parking lot. Somewhere in those towers, Martin Voss was regrouping. She pictured him pacing in one of his steel and glass offices, voice calm as he moved his pawns across the board. Her father's voice rasped through her memory, a whisper from the hospital bed hours ago. "Never give them your fear, they feed on it." Marisol ended the call. She turned to Claire, who leaned against the brick wall, dark circles bruising her eyes. Claire handed her the tablet. "The audit files, hot off the secure server." "It's all here," Claire said. "Avalon Holdings is just the tip. Voss controls 3 other shell companies, all funneling kickbacks through old suppliers, bribes, even union contracts." Marisol scrolled through the documents, each page a new sin, enough to keep him in court for decades. Claire hesitated. "Unless he vanishes first." Marisol snorted. "Not this time. We tie him to this city so tight he'll choke on the legal fees before he buys his way out." She tapped the screen, pulling up a news alert. The leaked fraud story had mutated overnight. Blogs, financial pundits, rumor mills. But the new narrative was shifting. The brave new CEO who exposed the rot, who saved her father, who faced down the empire's worst demons with her jaw set, and her spine straight. But the damage was real. Stock prices were still skidding, clients hesitating, smaller partners threatening to break ties. A single mistake now and it would all collapse. Her father's legacy, her name, her people's livelihoods. She looked up at Claire. Where's the board now? Lucia's rallying the independents, Marcus is drafting the press packet, Camille's leaking the evidence to the right reporters. And Gregory? Claire winced. His lawyers are in overdrive, claiming you forged everything. Voss is probably funding it. Marisol didn't flinch. Let him. The more they fight, the guiltier they look. Her phone buzzed again. A new number. Another cryptic text. Your father's will. Check the vault. Marisol's breath caught. The vault. The old sub-basement beneath Quinn & Co.'s tower. She hadn't been down there since she was 12, playing hide-and-seek among dusty safes and locked filing cabinets that smelled of cold metal and old paper. She pocketed her phone and turned to Claire. Get the car. The sub-basement was colder than she remembered. A steel and cement tomb humming with the low growl of generators. Claire held the flashlight as Marisol knelt in front of the largest safe, the combination pad blinking red in the dark. Her fingers hesitated over the numbers. Her father's birthday. Her mother's. The date of the company's founding. The dial clicked open with the final number. Her own birthday. She almost laughed. Even at the end, he couldn't resist making it personal. Inside, stacks of manila folders rested atop an ancient metal lockbox. She pulled the folders out first. Birth certificates, bank ledgers, handwritten contracts from decades ago. At the very bottom, a sealed envelope with her name on it in her father's angular scrawl. Claire held the light steady as Marisol ripped it open. A single sheet of paper fell out, a new will. One that named her not just CEO, but sole owner of the controlling shares, with explicit instructions. In the event of sabotage or coercion, my daughter holds final authority over all assets. Trust only her. Claire exhaled. He knew. Marisol's hands shook. He knew Voss would come for him one day. She pulled the lockbox out and popped it open. Inside, a flash drive identical to the one she'd carried into the warehouse, but this one marked with a strip of tape. Binal. Marisol plugged it into her phone. A video played, her father, seated at his old desk, looking older than she'd ever let herself admit. His eyes were tired, but they gleamed with the same steel she saw in her reflection. If you're watching this, Marisol, it means you're alone, or you think you are. You aren't. Not really. There will always be people like Claire, like the ones who still believe in what this company could be. But there will always be men like Voss, too. I built this empire to lift our family out of the gutter. I thought I could control the monsters I invited in. I was wrong. You won't be. Marisol felt her throat tighten. The video glitched, then continued. You're stronger than I ever was. Take it all. Burn it down if you have to. But never ever let them laugh at you again. The screen went black. Claire's voice was soft in the echoing dark. What now? Marisol tucked the flash drive into her pocket, the weight of it anchoring her in a way that felt terrifying and freeing at the same time. She turned to her friend, her voice low and unshakable. Now we fight like hell. Above them, the building seemed to groan, ancient pipes shifting, the whole weight of the Quinn legacy pressing down on her shoulders. She welcomed it. She'd hold it all. She'd drag every hidden monster into the light. Marisol shut the safe door, spun the dial, and looked Claire dead in the eye. We go public with the will. We file the charges. We freeze every account Voss controls. And if that doesn't break him? She cracked a smile that felt more like a threat than a promise. Then we go to war. Claire smiled back, weary but ready. Yes, ma'am. They climbed the metal stairs back toward the glow of the lobby lights, two shadows against the rising storm. Marisol thought of the laughing emoji that started it all, the prank that was never just a prank. And she knew, deep in her marrow, that she'd never be a punchline again. Marisol didn't bother to sleep that night. She spent it at the long oak conference table on the 32nd floor of Quinn & Co.'s headquarters, her father's old war room. The skyline beyond the glass walls glittered like a field of diamonds. mocking her exhaustion. In front of her sat the final will, the audit files, and the drives she'd pried out of every secret safe her father had squirreled away over the years. Each one was a key to a lock that Martin Voss thought would stay sealed forever. Claire returned just before dawn, breathless from a run across the street to the broadcast studio. She dropped a box of steaming takeout and fresh flash drives on the table. Press kit is packaged. Financial Times, The Guardian, and every major network have the files. It goes live at 8 a.m. sharp. Marisol didn't look up. She was tracing the path of an old offshore account on a sheet of scrap paper, arrows connecting names like a detective's murder board. How's Dad? Stable. Doctors say he's more stubborn than they are. Claire hesitated, then pushed the coffee closer. Are you ready for this? Marisol exhaled through her nose. Ready? She had been raised for this. Not in the ways her father planned with etiquette tutors and gala invitations, but in the late nights she spent watching him fight off old guard stockholders with nothing but a grin and a black ledger. She looked at her friend and said it aloud. Yes, and after today there's no crawling back into the shadows for any of them. Claire gave a tired smile. Good, because the board is gathering now. They're nervous. They're terrified, really. Some of them still think you'll tank the company with this. Then they never deserved to sit at that table. By 9, the boardroom was packed. Lucia sat with her phone locked in both hands like it might save her from drowning. Marcus leaned forward, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the picture of an anxious rebel. Camille flipped through legal memos like tarot cards, searching for a future where they survived the next 48 hours. Marisol didn't sit at the head of the table. She stood. She wanted them to feel the heat of her presence, the raw edge of her voice. You all know why we're here. The documents are on your screens. This is not speculation anymore. This is fact. She gestured to the projection on the glass wall behind her. Flowcharts of money trails, lists of fake vendors, screenshots of Voss's shell companies. Each bullet point a confession carved out in data. Camille's pen tapped the table. You want us to vote on this now? Marisol met her stare. No, there's nothing to vote on. The will gives me controlling authority. I'm not asking. I'm informing you. Voss's assets are frozen. The DOJ is moving in. And we're launching our own civil action to recover stolen revenue. Lucia let out a soft, bitter laugh. The market will riot. We'll be worth half what we were last quarter. Marisol tilted her chin. Only for a while. When we survive this, and we will, we'll be the cleanest damn company on the street. No more rumors, no more skeletons, no more parasites draining us from within. The room went silent. Then Marcus spoke, voice low and sure. What do you need from us? Your loyalty, and your silence until this hits the wire. She paused, letting the words settle like a blade drawn across the throat of doubt. If any of you leak this before it's ready, you're handing Voss the one chance he has left to spin it. If you do that, you'll wish you'd never cashed a Quinn paycheck. One by one, heads dipped. Resignation, then resolve. Claire slipped her a phone. Ready? Marisol nodded. She stepped away from the table and walked into the hall outside, her breath catching when she saw the gaggle of cameras already pressed against the glass. 100 microphones waited on the other side. Claire gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Last chance to hide under your desk. Marisol smiled, tight and sharp. Never again. The press room felt smaller than she remembered. Maybe because she filled it now, all eyes locked on her as she took the podium. She could almost see the tweets forming behind every phone camera. The CEO, who took down her father's empire to save it. Quinn versus Voss, the final showdown. She didn't read her statement. She didn't need to. She spoke it into the bright camera lights like she was speaking to the ghost of her father's old ambition. My name is Marisol Quinn. I was the joke in a tweet once, a rumor in a comment section, a line on an offshore account's ledger, no more. She paused, letting the hush swallow the room. Martin Voss and his network of frauds and thieves thought they could hollow us out. They thought they could buy silence and break trust. Today, we expose them. Today, we end them. She held up the final flash drive between two fingers. It gleamed like a bullet casing. This goes to every regulator, every journalist, every shareholder who ever doubted that Quinn & Company could clean its own house. Questions erupted before she finished, but she didn't hear them. She stepped back into Claire's waiting arms, the press clamoring like seagulls at a feast. Behind the chaos, she saw a single figure standing by the exit, a tall, silver-haired man in an overcoat, Voss. Watching her, his eyes met hers through the mob. He didn't smile this time. He simply turned and disappeared into the corridor, his back already retreating into history. Marisol felt a strange, hollow ache. She knew the fight wasn't over. Courtrooms, depositions, angry investors, all of it waited like a minefield ahead. But she also knew she would not face it alone. Not anymore. She turned to Claire. "Let's get my father home." Claire grinned. "What about the board?" Marisol's laugh was raw and real. "They can call a meeting, I'll be there, but they're on my time now." As they pushed through the throng, a reporter shouted after her, voice high and wild, "Marisol! Are you really taking over the entire company?" She didn't break stride. She just looked over her shoulder, eyes bright, and said, "I already did." The days that followed felt like living inside the eye of a hurricane. Marisol barely left the office, moving from conference calls with federal investigators to closed-door strategy sessions with Claire and a rotating cast of shell-shocked board members. Reporters camped outside the Quinn & Company tower 24/7, cameras always trained on the revolving doors, waiting to catch her slipping up, cracking, admitting defeat. But she never did. She slept in her father's old suite twice, curled on the stiff leather couch with her phone buzzing like a heartbeat beside her. She'd wake up to the blur of news headlines. Voss indicted in multi-billion-dollar scheme. Quinn & Company. CEO fights back. Ter too shy boy. More like chosen. She hated that last one. That echo of the prank that started this. But she understood it too. It was the headline that made her a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. Her father came home in a hush of flashing lights and whispered reassurances. He was weaker than she remembered, his shoulders stooped, his voice reduced to a thin rasp. But his eyes, when they met hers, still held that flinty glint. Pride, fear, regret, all rolled into one. "I should have handled him myself," Henry Quinn croaked from the blanket-draped recliner they'd set up in his office. "Should have cut him off before he ever—" "Stop." Marisol's hand on his was warm but immovable. "This isn't your war anymore. It's mine. You did what you could. You taught me how to finish it." He closed his eyes, too tired to argue. Claire stepped in then, her tablet under one arm, fresh pages of forensic accounting reports under the other. "Sorry to interrupt, boss," she said, her tone respectful but urgent. "Marcus just confirmed Voss's lawyers filed for a freeze on your controlling shares. They're claiming you forged the will." Marisol's pulse didn't even quicken. "Of course they are." Henry tried to sit up straighter. "He won't win. Not with what you have on him." "He won't even come close," Marisol said. She squeezed his hand, then let it go. "Claire, set up the press roundtable. And the shareholder briefing. No lawyers, no PR spin, just facts." Claire hesitated. "It'll be brutal. They'll ask everything. The fraud, your father's kidnapping, your mother's death, the rumor you're not really his kid." "I want them to ask," Marisol cut in. "When you drag your monsters into the light, you don't get to pick which ones show up. We take every question. We answer everyone. And we show them exactly who's in charge now." Claire's eyes were wide but fierce. "Yes, ma'am." The round table was set in the big atrium off the executive lobby, a sleek, echoing space that once hosted holiday parties and cocktail hours, now filled with camera rigs and chairs, arranged in a brutal half-circle around Marisol's lone seat. She sat down, shoulders square, legs crossed, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Claire. "We've got your back. Say it all." The first reporter stood. "Ms. Quinn, when did you first realize your father's empire was compromised?" Marisol's voice was steady as she told them about the prank tweet, the sudden wave of mockery and suspicion, the thread she'd pulled that led her here. She described the shell companies, the hidden ledgers, the betrayal that bled her family dry while they all looked the other way. A woman in a navy suit stepped forward next. Did you ever question if you were really adopted? The question hit like a slap, but she didn't flinch. Every kid wonders if they belong, she said, but I never doubted my father's love. The only thing that made me feel like I didn't belong was him making it a joke for the whole world. He paid for that mistake. So did I. And now, so will Voss. They fired question after question. The hush that fell when she told them about the night in the warehouse was so complete she could hear the echo of her own voice. He told me he believed I'd always be stronger than him. He was right. The last question came from a young freelancer in the back, his voice cracking with nerves. Ms. Quinn, what do you say to the people who think you're too young, too emotional, too reckless to run a company this size? Marisol's smile was slow and dangerous. I say they're right. I am young, I am emotional. And I am reckless enough to do what my father couldn't. Clean our house. If that scares people like Voss, good. It should. The reporters erupted, the roar of cameras and shouted follow-ups bouncing off the marble floor. Marisol stood, the floodlights casting her shadow across the atrium like a banner. She didn't run this company from her father's chair anymore. She carried it on her shoulders, tattooed it on her bones. Marisol stepped off the private jet into the damp chill of Luxembourg just before dawn. The sky over the tiny airport glowed slate gray, heavy with a storm that hadn't quite decided when to break. She wore the same dark blazer she'd faced the Chicago press in, the fabric stiff from too many hours of wear, her hair pulled back in a severe twist that made her cheekbones look like sharpened stone. Claire was at her side the moment they cleared customs. Local counsel is waiting at the hotel. Voss's people know we're here. He's already shifted another $1 million into a new shell corp. Marisol snorted. Good. Let him run, it leaves a bigger paper trail. They rode in silence through narrow streets lined with old stone buildings that looked like they'd been dragged forward from another century. Marisol couldn't help but think of her father's voice, soft and rasped, when she'd told him she was leaving. Bring it all home, Mari. The hotel was a fortress disguised as a boutique inn. Their legal team waited in a small conference room that smelled faintly of polished wood and new leather briefcases. Charts covered every wall. Flowcharts of dummy companies, names she'd memorized in the long nights back home. Avalon Holdings, Braxley International, a dozen more faceless fronts that all pointed back to the same man. Local counsel, a severe woman named Elise Duval, clicked the remote and filled the screen with grainy security footage. Voss stepping into a marble lobby 3 blocks from the courthouse, flanked by men who looked like they'd step over corpses if it meant protecting the old man's secrets. He's here, Elise said, probably to meet his attorneys before the injunction hearing tomorrow. This is his last stronghold. Marisol leaned forward, tracing the lines on the screen with her finger. We have enough to nail him? Elise hesitated. Enough to open the vault, but not enough to slam it shut. He'll try to settle, to cut you out of the controlling shares and spin you as the emotional daughter who couldn't keep her house in order. Marisol's jaw flexed. Let him try. He doesn't get to leave this city without feeling what it's like to stand across from someone he can't buy. That afternoon, she walked into the courthouse like it was her boardroom. She could feel eyes on her as she passed through the echoing marble halls, lawyers whispering in 3 languages, aides glancing up from their notes. Claire trailed behind her, eyes bright, tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. The hearing room was a wood-paneled box that smelled of old paper and older grudges. Marisol sat across from Voss, the polished table a thin line between predator and prey. He looked older than ever, the skin under his eyes sunken and bruised. But his smirk was as oily as the day she'd seen him in that warehouse. You think you're clever, girl, he said softly, leaning toward her so only she could hear. But you can't outlast me. You think you've won, but you don't know what I still have in my pocket. Marisol didn't flinch. She met his stare with a smile that felt like a blade unsheathed. You don't have pockets deep enough for the truth. Enjoy retirement, Martin. The judge entered. The room settled into an electric hush. Papers shuffled. Voices rose, fell, clashed. Elise fired off clause after clause, pointing to the mountain of files Marisol had dragged across the Atlantic. Voss's lawyers sputtered. The judge's pen scribbled notes in a margin so wide it might as well have been a death sentence. Hours later, it was done. The ruling came down like a hammer. Assets frozen, control transferred, every loophole slammed shut. For the first time in decades, the Quinn name wasn't just a rumor whispered in back halls. It was the headline that burned through every feed from Chicago to Luxembourg. Outside, rain finally broke over the city. Marisol stood under a stone archway, the courthouse steps slick behind her. Claire appeared beside her, an umbrella in hand, eyes alight with exhausted triumph. "You did it," Claire said. "It's over." Marisol let the words settle in her bones. She tilted her face up into the rain, letting the chill wash away the sweat and grime of the last weeks. "No," she said. "It's not over. But it's ours now, and they'll never take it again." Her phone buzzed. A single message from her father, back home in Chicago. Proud doesn't even cover it. She tucked the phone away and looked at Claire. "Book the flights. We're going home." Claire laughed. "Chicago's not ready for you." Marisol's answering smile was wicked and sharp. "They better get ready, because I'm just getting started."